Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The fluorescent lights above buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over the vinyl booths and cracked linoleum floor of Romano's diner. My feet ached, a dull, persistent throb that had become my constant companion after 8 hours of shuttling plates between the kitchen and tables that never seemed to empty. The smell of burnt coffee and grease hung thick in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of industrial cleaner I'd used to mop up a spilled milkshake an hour ago. My uniform, a faded pink dress with a white apron that had seen better days, clung to my skin, damp with sweat and the residue of 100 different meals. I was invisible here, just another tired face in a sea of tired faces, serving food to people who never looked up from their phones long enough to see me as anything more than a means to an end. My fingers trembled slightly as I refilled coffee cups, the weight of unpaid bills pressing down on my shoulders like physical things. Rent was due in 3 days. Emma's daycare needed payment by Friday. The electricity company had already sent 2 warnings. I was 24 and drowning. The dinner rush was finally winding down when they arrived. I noticed the shift in atmosphere before I saw them, a sudden tension that rippled through the diner like a stone dropped in still water. Conversations stuttered. Silverware stopped clinking. Even Jerry, our cook who never stopped whistling, went quiet. 3 black SUVs pulled up outside, their tinted windows reflecting the neon sign that flickered Romano's in tired red letters. They were sleek, expensive, completely out of place in this neighborhood where most people drove cars held together by rust and prayer. The vehicles gleamed under the streetlights, water beating on their polished surfaces from the rain that had started to fall. The first man who entered wore a dark suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. His eyes swept the room with professional efficiency, checking exits, assessing threats, cataloging faces. He was built like a wall, all shoulders and contained violence. He didn't sit, just stood by the door, one hand resting casually near his chest where I could see the slight bulge of a shoulder holster. 2 more men followed, flanking the entrance. Then he walked in. I felt him before I saw him, a shift in air pressure, a change in gravity. He moved like liquid shadow, all controlled grace and coiled power. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to a frame that spoke of both elegance and danger. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, lips that looked cruel even in repose. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark as midnight, cold as winter ice, they scanned the room with the casual authority of someone who owned everything he surveyed. The scent of expensive cologne reached me. Something with notes of cedar and smoke, underlaid with something darker, more primal. It cut through the grease and coffee smell like a knife. He chose a booth in my section. Of course he did. My manager, Frank, appeared at my elbow so fast I jumped. His pudgy fingers gripped my arm, and I could smell the cigarettes on his breath. "Table 12, he hissed, his voice tight with something between fear and excitement. "Whatever they want. Whatever they need. And for God's sake, don't screw this up." "Who is he?" I whispered, but Frank had already scuttled away, retreating to the safety of the kitchen. My legs felt unsteady as I approached the booth. The bodyguards watched me with flat, assessing eyes, the kind of look that saw through clothes and skin straight down to bone. I clutched my order pad like a shield, my pulse hammering in my throat. He sat alone in the booth, one arm draped along the back of the seat, his body language speaking of absolute confidence. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome in any conventional sense. His features were too harsh, too predatory for that, but compelling, magnetic, dangerous in a way that made my stomach clench and my skin prickle with awareness. "What can I get you?" My voice came out steadier than I expected, which felt like a small victory. He didn't look at the menu, didn't look at me either, not at first. His gaze was fixed on something outside the rain-streaked window, his profile sharp enough to cut. When he finally turned those dark eyes on me, I felt pinned, a butterfly on display, every weakness exposed. "Coffee. Black." His voice was deep, smooth as aged whiskey, with an accent that spoke of old money and older violence, and whatever your cook makes best. "That would be the meatloaf," I said. finding my professional smile somewhere beneath the fear. "Comes with mashed potatoes and fine." He dismissed me with a slight gesture, already looking back at his phone. On the table in front of him, I noticed 2 other phones, one buzzing silently with incoming messages. A man who needed multiple lines of communication. A man with secrets. I should have walked away, should have taken his order to the kitchen and forgotten about those cold eyes and that dangerous mouth. But as I turned, my foot caught on the uneven linoleum. The same piece I'd been meaning to report to Frank for weeks. My body pitched forward, the order pad flying from my hands. I didn't hit the ground. Couldn't. Because suddenly there were hands on my waist. Strong, sure, impossibly fast. He'd moved without seeming to move at all, catching me before I could fall, pulling me against a chest that felt like stone wrapped in expensive fabric. For a moment, the world stopped. I was acutely aware of everything. The heat of his hands burning through the thin fabric of my uniform, the way my palms had landed flat against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my fingers. He smelled even better up close, that cologne mixing with something uniquely him. Leather and gunpowder and dark promises. His face was inches from mine. This close, I could see that his eyes weren't entirely black. There were flecks of amber around the pupils, like embers in coal. They bored into me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Careful," he murmured, and the word felt like a threat and a caress all at once. "I'm sorry, I pulled back, or tried to." His hands remained on my waist for a heartbeat longer than necessary, his thumbs pressing briefly against my hip bones before releasing me. The absence of his touch felt like cold water. "The floor," I stammered, bending to retrieve my order pad with shaking hands. "It's uneven." I've been asking them to fix it, but I was babbling. Why was I babbling? "What's your name?" He'd sat back down, but his eyes never left me. One of the bodyguards had shifted closer, his hand inside his jacket, but the man in the booth waved him back with an almost imperceptible gesture. "Kara." It came out as barely more than a whisper. "Kara Mitchell." He nodded once, as if filing the information away in some mental catalog. "Bring the coffee, Kara Mitchell." I fled to the kitchen on unsteady legs, my heart hammering against my ribs. Jerry gave me a look that said he'd seen the whole thing, but wisely kept his mouth shut. I poured the coffee with trembling hands, watching the dark liquid swirl in the white ceramic mug. When I brought it back, he was speaking in low tones into one of his phones, a language I didn't recognize, harsh and flowing all at once. He ended the call as I approached, accepting the coffee without comment. His fingers brushed mine as he took the mug, and I felt that touch like an electric shock straight to my core. The evening crawled by. I served his meal, meatloaf, which he ate methodically, each movement precise and controlled. The bodyguards had taken up positions around the diner, their presence keeping the other customers subdued and quiet. No one complained. No one even whispered too loudly. I couldn't stop watching him from the corner of my eye. The way he cut his food with surgical precision. The way he occasionally glanced at his phones, his expression never changing. The way, every so often, his gaze would flick up and find me. No matter where I was in the diner, no matter what I was doing, it felt like being hunted. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes, he stood. The bodyguards immediately straightened, ready to move. He walked to the register where I stood, his movements fluid and predatory. Up close again, I realized just how tall he was. At least 6'2", maybe more. I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "The check," he said, and I fumbled for the slip, my fingers clumsy with nerves. $23.47, I managed. He pulled out a leather wallet, black, expensive, worn soft with use, and extracted 3 $20 bills. He placed them on the counter between us, his fingers lingering on the money for a moment, before sliding them toward me. "Keep the change," he said. And then he was gone, moving toward the door with his entourage falling into formation around him. The SUVs roared to life outside, and within seconds, they disappeared into the rainy night. leaving only the memory of expensive cologne and cold eyes. I stared at the bills. $60 on a $23 check. A decent tip, better than most. But as I reached to pick up the money, I noticed something, a slight irregularity in the way the bills lay. I lifted the top two. Underneath, pressed flat against the counter, was a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it, looking around to make sure no one was watching. The handwriting was precise, almost architectural in its perfection. Your daughter needs you. The man who fathered her doesn't deserve either of you. You spilled coffee on his jacket 3 weeks ago at the Meridian Hotel. He laughed. I don't forget debts. He owes me $50,000. You can work off his debt, or I can collect from him. Your choice. Be at the corner of 5th and Main tomorrow, 9 p.m. Come alone, bring nothing. Tell no one. D. The paper slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the floor like a wounded bird. He knew about Emma. He knew about Marcus, Emma's father, the man who'd disappeared 6 months into my pregnancy with nothing but debts and broken promises in his wake. He knew about the Meridian Hotel, that catering job I'd taken to make extra money, the expensive party where I'd accidentally bumped into someone and spilled champagne and coffee across an obviously expensive jacket. I'd apologized profusely to the laughing man in the designer suit, never seeing his face clearly in the crowd, never knowing that simple accident had somehow tied me to something dark and dangerous. My knees gave out, and I grabbed the counter for support. Frank emerged from the back, his face flushed. Did he leave a tip? What did he... He saw my expression and stopped. Kara, you okay? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The diner spun around me, the buzzing lights, the smell of coffee, the concerned face of my manager all blurring into meaningless noise. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the windows like fingers demanding entry. And somewhere in the darkness, 3 black SUVs carried a man who held my daughter's future in his perfectly manicured hands, a man who knew things he shouldn't know. A man who'd given me a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I didn't sleep that night. Emma was with Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who watched her when I worked late shifts. I'd picked her up at 11, carrying her sleeping body up the 3 flights of stairs to our cramped apartment, her small arms wrapped trustingly around my neck. She smelled like the lavender soap Mrs. Chen used, and the strawberry shampoo I bought from the dollar store. At 3 years old, she was my entire world, dark curls like her father's, but eyes like mine, gray-green, and already too wise for such a young face. I'd laid her in the bed we shared, tucking the thin blanket around her small frame, and then I'd sat on the floor with my back against the wall, staring at that note until the words blurred together. He owes me $50,000. Marcus. Of course it was Marcus. That charming smile, those easy promises, the way he'd swept me off my feet when I was 21, and stupid enough to believe that love could fill an empty stomach. He'd disappeared the moment I'd told him I was pregnant, and I'd spent the last 3 years trying to forget he existed. But apparently, Marcus had been busy enough to steal from a man who traveled with armed guards and spoke in coded languages on multiple phones, busy enough to leave me holding the debt. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to go to the police, but the part that had grown up in this neighborhood, that had seen how the world really worked, knew better. Men like him, men who commanded silence with their presence, who moved through the city like sharks through dark water. They didn't make threats they couldn't keep, and they certainly didn't forgive debts. Your daughter needs you. 4 words that wrapped around my throat like a noose. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and sickly orange, I made my decision. I had no choice, really. I never had. The day passed in a fog. I called in sick to work, the first time in 2 years, and dropped Emma at daycare with a smile that felt like broken glass on my face. She'd kissed my cheek, her small hands cupping my face with the casual affection of childhood, completely unaware that her mother was walking toward something dark and irreversible. "Love you, Mama," she'd whispered against my ear, and I'd held her tighter than I should have, breathing in the scent of her, memorizing the weight of her in my arms. "Love you more, baby girl." I spent the afternoon in our apartment, watching the clock tick toward 9 p.m. with the slow inevitability of an execution. I showered, washing away the smell of the diner, and dressed in the only decent clothes I owned. Jeans without holes, a plain black sweater, the jacket I'd bought from a thrift store that almost looked professional if you didn't look too close. I braided my hair, the repetitive motion of weaving strands together oddly calming. At 8:30, I kissed Emma's sleeping form one more time. Mrs. Chen had agreed to keep her overnight, bless her kind heart, and stepped out into the October night. The city felt different somehow, more menacing. Shadows seemed deeper, streetlights dimmer. Every passing car could be him. Every footstep behind me could be danger. I walked the 12 blocks to 5th and Main with my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my breath forming small clouds in the cooling air. The corner was in the warehouse district, where old brick buildings stood like forgotten sentinels, their windows dark and empty. The streetlight overhead flickered intermittently, casting the intersection in alternating light and shadow. A few cars passed, but none stopped. I was alone. At exactly 9 p.m., I heard them. The SUVs appeared from 3 different directions, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of military training, or something worse. They formed a loose triangle around me, engines purring like predatory cats, headlights pinning me in place. I couldn't see through the tinted windows, but I felt the weight of eyes on me, assessing, judging, cataloging. The rear door of the center vehicle opened. He stepped out, and even in the dim light, he was devastating. Tonight, he wore all black. Suit, shirt, tie, even his shoes gleamed with dark polish. It made him look like a beautiful nightmare, something that belonged to the darkness between stars. The flickering streetlight caught the planes of his face, highlighting those sharp cheekbones, that cruel mouth. He walked toward me with that same liquid grace, and I forced myself to stand still, to not run, to not show the terror clawing at my insides. The bodyguards remained by the vehicles, but I could feel their attention like physical pressure. He stopped 3 feet away, his hands in his pockets, his head tilted slightly as he studied me. Up close, I noticed things I'd missed at the diner, a thin scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw was slightly too sharp to be symmetrical, the gold watch at his wrist that probably cost more than my yearly salary. "You came." His voice was the same as I remembered. Smooth, controlled, dangerous. Did I have a choice? The words came out steadier than I felt. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or appreciation. There's always a choice, Kara. You chose your daughter. Some would have chosen to run. I'm not some people. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze despite every instinct screaming at me to look away, to submit, to make myself small. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "No, you're not." He pulled something from his pocket, a phone, sleek and expensive. He swiped through several screens, then turned it toward me. "Recognize him?" The photo showed Marcus, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize, both of them laughing in what looked like an upscale restaurant. He looked good, better than when I'd known him. Designer clothes, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that came from money. My money, apparently. Money he'd stolen. "That's him," I said, my voice flat. "Marcus Chen, Emma's father." "Marcus Chen," he repeated, the name sounding like a curse in his elegant accent. "Who stole $50,000 from one of my shipments? Who used my name to broker deals he had no authority to make? Who's been living quite well off money that belongs to me?" He pocketed the phone. "Do you know what I do to thieves, Kara?" I swallowed hard. "I can imagine." "Can you?" He moved closer, and I caught that scent again, cedar and smoke and danger. "I don't think you can. I don't think someone like you has ever seen what men like me are capable of when we're crossed." "Someone like me?" Anger sparked through the fear, hot and bright and reckless. "You mean poor? Working class? Someone who actually has to worry about rent and food and keeping the lights on?" His eyes narrowed, but that almost smile remained. "I meant innocent, pure, untouched by the dirt that stains men like me." He reached out, and I flinched, but he only brushed a strand of hair that had escaped my braid behind my ear. His fingers were warm, his touch surprisingly gentle. "But you're angry. Good. Anger is useful. Fear makes people stupid. Anger makes them survive. I jerked back from his touch. What do you want from me? I told you. You work off his debt. Doing what? I'm a waitress. I don't have skills you could possibly... You're Emma's mother. He said it like it explained everything. Marcus stole from me, but more than that. He laughed when I suggested he should take responsibility for his child. He laughed at the idea that you and your daughter were his problem. The temperature in his voice dropped several degrees. I don't like men who abandon their children. My father was many things, most of them terrible, but he never pretended we didn't exist. So this is about what? Morality? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. I stopped myself, but he finished for me. Criminal? Murderer? Monster? He shrugged one elegant shoulder. All accurate. But even monsters have codes, Kara. And Marcus broke mine. That doesn't answer my question. What do you want me to do? He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he gestured toward the SUV. Get in. We'll discuss terms somewhere less exposed. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to refuse. Getting in that vehicle was crossing a line, stepping into a world I couldn't uncross or step back from. But Emma's face floated before my eyes. Those trusting gray-green eyes, that innocent smile. I walked to the SUV. The interior was exactly what I expected. Black leather, tinted windows, the smell of expensive cologne and gun oil. He slid in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded like a cell door locking. The vehicle pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent. I watched the familiar streets of my neighborhood slide past the tinted windows, each block taking me further from safety. Where are we going? My voice sounded small in the enclosed space. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. He was scrolling through one of his phones, his attention seemingly divided, but I had the sense that he was aware of every breath I took, every shift of my body. You'll be home by midnight. You have my word. The word of a criminal. He glanced up, and that almost smile appeared again, the word of Dante Rossini, which, in certain circles, is worth more than any legal contract. He set the phone aside. Your daughter is with Mrs. Chen, apartment 3B, correct? The arrangement is 4 nights a week, Tuesdays through Fridays, 7 p.m. to midnight. You pay her $60 a week, which is less than she deserves but all you can afford. My blood turned to ice. How do you... I know everything about you, Kara Mitchell. Born April 3rd, 2001 at Mercy Hospital. Mother died of cancer when you were 16. Father unknown. You graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA despite working 2 jobs. Accepted to State University on a partial scholarship but couldn't afford the rest. You've worked at Romano's Diner for 3 years. You have $247 in your checking account, $0 in savings. Your rent is $850 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment you share with your daughter. You're 2 months behind on your electric bill and 1 month behind on Emma's daycare fees. Each fact landed like a physical blow. He'd investigated me, thoroughly, which meant this wasn't random, wasn't just about Marcus. This was calculated, planned. Why? I whispered. Why do you know all this? Because I needed to know if you were worth the investment. He shifted slightly, turning to face me more fully. Investment? $50,000 is not an insignificant amount, but it's not enough to warrant my personal attention. Marcus Chen is a small-time thief, barely worth the bullet to kill him. His casual mention of murder made my stomach clench. But when I looked into his life, I found you. And Emma. And I learned about the Meridian Hotel. The catering event. That spilled coffee. I don't understand. The man whose jacket you ruined was my uncle, Roberto Rossini. His voice carried a weight of something. Grief, maybe, or old rage. He died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack, sudden and unexpected. The doctors said the stress finally caught up with him. He paused, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. He spoke of you that night, the kind young woman who'd apologized so profusely for such a small accident, who'd offered to pay for the cleaning, despite clearly having nothing to spare. He was charmed. The pieces started clicking together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Before he died, He changed his will. He'd never married, never had children. He left everything to me, his businesses, his properties, his accounts. But he also left a list of people he wanted me to look after. Your name was on it. The waitress with the kind eyes. He called you. Dante's expression was unreadable. So when I discovered that the same woman my uncle wanted protected was connected to a thief who'd stolen from me, who'd abandoned his own child, it seemed like fate. Fate, I repeated numbly. I'm offering you a deal, Kara, a way to protect your daughter and honor my uncle's last wishes. He leaned closer, and I pressed myself against the door, my heart hammering. Work for me. Let me take care of Emma's needs, her daycare, her health care, her future education. Let me ensure you never have to choose between rent and food again. In exchange, you'll be available when I need you. Available for what? Appearances, events, dinners. You'll act as my companion when necessary. His eyes bored into mine, nothing more. This is not a sexual arrangement, Kara. I'm not buying you. I'm protecting what my uncle valued. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it was. And Marcus? Marcus is my concern, not yours. You'll never see him again. That I promise you. The vehicle came to a stop. I glanced out the window and saw we were parked outside an upscale Italian restaurant, the kind with valet service and a waiting list measured in months. Through the windows I could see people dining, drinking wine, living lives so far removed from mine, they might as well be on another planet. Dante opened his door, then paused. You have until we finish dinner to decide. But understand, if you walk away, Marcus's debt becomes his problem. And I collect my debts, Kara, one way or another. He stepped out, and after a moment's hesitation, I followed. The October wind cut through my thin jacket as I stood on the sidewalk, watching him walk toward the restaurant entrance. The doorman opened the door immediately, bowing slightly, a gesture of recognition and respect. Or fear. I looked back at the SUV, at the city stretching out behind it, at the ordinary world where I'd been drowning slowly for years. Then I looked at the restaurant, at Dante Rossini waiting in the doorway, his hand extended toward me. The devil's bargain, offered with elegant grace. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he pulled me gently toward the light and warmth of the restaurant, toward a future I couldn't begin to predict. Twar. The restaurant was called Bellinoti, and it was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in movies. Crystal chandeliers cast soft golden light over white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. The air smelled of garlic, fresh bread, and expensive wine. A pianist played something classical in the corner, the notes floating through conversations held in hushed, refined tones. Every eye in the room turned to us as we entered. Or rather, they turned to him. Dante moved through the space like he owned it, which, for all I knew, he did. The maitre d' appeared instantly, his professional smile not quite hiding the wariness in his eyes. Mr. Rossini, your usual table is ready. Thank you, Marco. Dante's hand remained on the small of my back, a possessive gesture that made my skin burn even through layers of clothing. He guided me through the dining room, past tables where conversations died as we passed, then resumed in urgent whispers once we'd moved on. Our table was in the back corner, positioned so that Dante's back was to the wall, and he had a clear view of every entrance and exit. One of the bodyguards, the one who'd been at the diner, took up position near the bar, his eyes constantly scanning. Another disappeared toward what I assumed was the kitchen entrance. Dante pulled out my chair with old-world courtesy that seemed incongruous with everything else I knew about him. I sat, my hands twisting in my lap beneath the table, acutely aware of how out of place I looked in my thrift store jacket and worn jeans. Relax, he said, taking his own seat with fluid grace. No one here will judge you. They wouldn't dare. Because they're afraid of you. Yes. No hesitation, no false modesty. Just simple truth. A waiter appeared, young, nervous, his hands shaking slightly as he poured water into crystal glasses. Mr. Rossini, the chef has prepared something special this evening. And for the lady? I opened my mouth, but Dante spoke first. Bring us the tasting menu, all 7 courses, and a bottle of the 98 Barolo. The waiter nodded and vanished. I stared at Dante across the table. This beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow tangled himself into my life like a knot I couldn't untie. "I can order for myself," I said quietly. "Can you read Italian?" He gestured to the menu, which I noticed for the first time was entirely in Italian, without translations. "No, but—" "Then let me take care of it." His tone wasn't condescending, just matter of fact. "This is what you'll need to get used to, Kara. If you accept my offer, there will be many dinners like this, events where you'll need to look comfortable, confident, where you'll be on my arm and expected to play a role." "What role? Your girlfriend? Your mistress?" "My companion." He leaned back as the waiter returned with wine, going through the ritual of presenting the bottle, uncorking it, pouring a small amount for Dante to taste. He swirled it, sniffed, sipped, then nodded approval. "There's a difference. The people in my world, they'll make assumptions. Let them. What matters is the truth between us." The waiter poured wine into my glass, deep red, almost black in the dim light. I'd never tasted wine that cost more than $10 a bottle. This one probably cost more than my monthly rent. "And what is the truth between us?" I asked, not touching the glass. Dante was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. "The truth is that I'm a man bound by honor to protect you because my uncle asked me to. The truth is that your daughter deserves better than a father who steals and runs. The truth is that I can give you both security, real security, in exchange for something relatively simple. Nothing is simple with men like you." That almost smile again. "You're learning already." He took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving mine. "Ask me your questions, Kara. All of them. You deserve to know what you're agreeing to." The first course arrived, something delicate and artistic on fine china, garnished with microgreens and a drizzle of sauce that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. I stared at it, my appetite completely gone. "What happens to Marcus?" I asked. "He'll be given a choice. Return what he stole plus interest, or work off the debt in other ways." Dante cut into his food with surgical precision. "Either way, he won't be a problem for you anymore." "You mean you'll kill him?" "I mean, he won't be a problem." He ate a bite, savoring it while I sat frozen. "Eat, Kara. The chef here is exceptional, and you're too thin. When did you last have a proper meal?" "I eat fine." "You eat enough to survive. That's not the same thing." He gestured to my plate. "Try it. I promise it's not poisoned." I picked up my fork, heavy silver, perfectly balanced, and took a small bite. The flavors exploded across my tongue, complex and layered in ways I hadn't known food could be. Despite everything, despite the fear and confusion and the surreal nature of sitting across from a Mafia boss in a restaurant that cost more per meal than I made in a week, I took another bite. "Good girl," he murmured, and something in his tone made heat flood my cheeks. The courses came one after another, each more elaborate than the last. Handmade pasta with truffle shavings, seared scallops with saffron foam, braised short rib that melted on my tongue. Dante watched me eat, his own meals consumed with methodical efficiency, his attention divided between me and his phones, which buzzed periodically with messages he'd glance at, respond to, then set aside. "Why do you need a companion?" I asked during the fifth course. Some kind of fish I couldn't identify, delicate and perfect. Surely you could have any woman you wanted. Want and need are different things. He refilled my wine glass. I'd been drinking more than I'd intended, the alcohol loosening the tight knot of tension in my chest. The women who are attracted to men like me are attracted to power, money, status. They come with agendas, expectations. You, on the other hand, want nothing from me. I want my daughter safe. Exactly. Your agenda is pure, uncomplicated. You're not trying to become Mrs. Rossini or gain access to my accounts or position yourself for advancement. He leaned forward slightly. You're also beautiful in a way that doesn't require effort. Natural. Real. The women in my world are constructed. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect bodies sculpted by surgeons. He paused, his eyes traveling over my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. Authentic. I'm ordinary. You're extraordinary. You just don't know it yet. He sat back as the sixth course arrived. cheese and fruit, arranged artistically. Your daughter, tell me about her. The shift in topic caught me off guard. Emma? She's everything. Smart, funny, stubborn. She loves dinosaurs and hates vegetables. She wants to be a paleontologist when she grows up, even though she can barely pronounce it. I felt my expression soften, the way it always did when I talked about her. She asks a million questions and never accepts, because I said so as an answer. She's better than I ever was, better than I ever could be. She has a good mother. It wasn't a question. She deserves better than what I can give her. The admission hurt. She deserves dance lessons and books and toys that aren't from yard sales. She deserves a home where the heat doesn't get shut off in winter and where there's always enough food. She deserves everything, Dante finished. She deserves everything. He was quiet for a moment, something dark passing behind his eyes. My mother died when I was Emma's age. Caught in the crossfire of my father's war with a rival family. My uncle Roberto, he helped raise me after that, taught me that family, true family, is worth more than all the money and power in the world. His jaw tightened. Your daughter will have everything, Kara. I give you my word. And what do you get in return, really? Redemption, perhaps. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Or maybe just the satisfaction of knowing I honored a good man's last wish. Does it matter? The 7th course arrived. Dessert. Tiramisu, chocolate, tiny perfect pastries dusted with powdered sugar. I pushed mine around the plate, my mind spinning. I need to know the rules, I said finally. If I agree to this, I need to know exactly what you expect. Dante set down his fork and folded his hands on the table. You'll move to a better apartment, one I own, secure, in a good neighborhood. Emma will attend the best preschool in the city. Her health care will be covered, completely. You'll receive an allowance, enough to live comfortably, to buy clothes suitable for the events you'll attend with me. In exchange, when I need you, for a dinner, a charity gala, a business meeting that requires a softer face, you'll come, you'll smile, you'll act as though being by my side is exactly where you want to be. And if I refuse an event, you won't. Not a threat, just certainty. Because refusing means Emma loses everything I'm offering, and you won't do that to her. He was right, and we both knew it. This wasn't really a choice. It was a beautifully wrapped cage, and I was walking into it willingly. What about dating? My personal life? The wine had made me bold enough to ask. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. There will be no other men, Kara. Not while you're under my protection. The appearance of impropriety would be problematic. So I'm supposed to be celibate while playing your pretend girlfriend? I never said I expected celibacy. His voice dropped lower, intimate, and dark. I said no other men. There's a difference. The implication hung in the air between us, charged and dangerous. Heat crept up my neck, and I reached for my wine glass with shaking hands. This is insane, I whispered. All of this. I should walk away. I should take Emma and disappear and what? Live in constant fear that Marcus's other debts will catch up to you? That one of my competitors might learn about you and use you against me? That Emma will grow up poor and struggling like you did? He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His skin was warm, his touch surprisingly gentle. You're already in this, Kara. From the moment Marcus used my name, from the moment you spilled that coffee and smiled at my uncle, you were in this. I'm just offering you a way to survive it. I wanted to pull my hand away, wanted to run, but his touch felt like an anchor in a world that had tilted off its axis. How do I know you'll keep your word? My voice came out barely above a whisper. You don't. His thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand, the gesture oddly soothing. You have to trust me. Or rather, you have to trust that I value my honor more than I value control over one stubborn waitress who looks at me like I'm a monster. Aren't you? Yes. No hesitation. But I'm a monster who keeps his promises. And I promise you this. As long as you're under my protection, no one will hurt you or Emma. No one will take from you. You'll want for nothing. He leaned closer, his eyes intense. All you have to do is let me take care of you. The words should have sounded patronizing, controlling. But there was something in his voice, a kind of desperate sincerity that caught me off guard. This wasn't just about honor or duty. This was personal for him in a way I didn't fully understand. Outside, through the restaurant windows, I could see the city lights twinkling. Somewhere out there, Emma was sleeping safely in Mrs. Chen's apartment, completely unaware that her mother was making a deal with the devil to secure her future. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Okay, I'll do it." Dante's hand tightened on mine for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he released me, leaning back in his chair with that same controlled grace. Smart choice. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Kara. You just made the right one. He gestured to the waiter, who appeared instantly. "We're done here. Have the car brought around." As we stood to leave, Dante's hand returned to the small of my back. Possessive, proprietary. The other diners watched us go, their whispered conversations resuming the moment we passed. I caught fragments. Rossini's new. Where did he find? Poor girl doesn't know. Outside, the October air was cold and sharp, cutting through the wine warmth in my blood. The SUV pulled up, and Dante opened the door for me, his body blocking me from the street. From view, from danger, from escape. "I'll have someone move your things tomorrow," he said as the vehicle pulled away from the curb. "The new apartment will be ready by evening. Emma won't have to change daycares. I've already arranged for transportation." You were very sure I'd say yes. I was hopeful. He was scrolling through his phone again, but I caught the slight curve of his lips, and I'm rarely wrong about people. The ride back to my neighborhood felt shorter than the ride to the restaurant. Too short. Not enough time to process what I'd agreed to, what I'd signed away. The SUV stopped outside my building, and Dante finally looked up from his phone. "Someone will contact you tomorrow with details. Don't go to work. I'll handle Romano's." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. New, expensive, identical to one of his. "This is yours now. My number is already programmed. You call if you need anything at all, at any time." "Understood?" I took the phone, its weight unfamiliar in my hand. "Understood." "Good." He studied me for a long moment, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Get some rest, Kara. Your life just changed. Tomorrow, you'll start seeing exactly how much." I stepped out of the SUV, my legs unsteady, from the wine, from exhaustion, from the surreal nature of the entire evening. I watched the taillights disappear into the night, taking Dante Rossini back to whatever dark world he inhabited, and I climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, let myself in, and stood in the dim kitchen, staring at the expensive phone in my hand. The screen lit up with a message. "Sleep well, Piccola. You're safe now. D." I pressed the phone to my chest and tried to believe him. D, a prison that might look like salvation. The new apartment was in a building I'd walked past 100 times but never imagined entering. It stood in the Marina district, all glass and steel and modern elegance, with a doorman who nodded respectfully as movers carried our meager possessions inside. Emma clutched my hand, her eyes wide as saucers, watching men in crisp uniforms transport our lives from cardboard boxes to a space that felt more like a dream than reality. "Mama, is this really ours?" she whispered, her small voice echoing in the marble lobby. "Yes, baby. Really ours." The lie tasted bitter. Nothing was really ours anymore. It all belonged to him. The apartment was on the 15th floor. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, hardwood floors that gleamed under recessed lighting. The furniture was already in place. A cream-colored sofa, a dining table that could seat 6, beds with linens so soft they felt like clouds. The kitchen had granite countertops and appliances I didn't know how to use. Emma's room was painted a soft lavender, with a bookshelf already filled with new books and a toy chest overflowing with things I could never have afforded. "There's a princess bed," Emma shrieked, releasing my hand to run toward the white canopy bed draped in gauze curtains. She climbed up, bouncing on the mattress, her laughter filling the space like sunlight. I stood in the doorway, watching her joy, feeling my heart crack open. This was what I'd wanted for her: safety, comfort, happiness. but the price felt like selling pieces of my soul. A woman appeared behind me, elegant and professional in a navy suit. "Ms. Mitchell? I'm Teresa Alvarez. Mr. Rossini sent me to help you settle in and explain the arrangements." I turned to face her, taking in her confident posture, her kind eyes behind designer glasses. "The arrangements?" "Yes. Let's talk in the kitchen while Emma explores." She smiled at my daughter, who was now examining every toy with the focused intensity only a 3-year-old could muster. "She's beautiful. Mr. Rossini mentioned she likes dinosaurs? He told you that?" He was very specific about her room. Teresa guided me to the kitchen, where she opened a leather portfolio on the island. "You'll receive a monthly allowance deposited directly to your new account. The card and information are here. The amount should cover all personal expenses, clothing, and incidentals. Emma's preschool tuition is paid through graduation, and her health care is comprehensive. The insurance cards are also here." She spread documents across the granite, each one representing another piece of my independence being signed away: bank accounts, insurance policies, a new driver's license with this address, a credit card with my name embossed in silver. There's also a car in the garage. Level 3, space 1512. A sedan, reliable, fully insured. Mr. Rossini felt you'd need transportation. Teresa's tone was matter-of-fact, as if men regularly bought cars for women they barely knew. "Your schedule will be sent to your phone. When Mr. Rossini needs you for an event, you'll receive 48 hours notice when possible, though sometimes it will be less. Emma will be cared for by vetted professional nannies during those times." "Strangers watching my daughter?" The words came out sharper than intended. Teresa's expression softened. "I understand your concern. The nannies all have extensive backgrounds in early childhood education and have been thoroughly screened. You'll meet them before they watch Emma, and you're welcome to reject anyone you're not comfortable with." She pulled out another folder, this one thick with profiles, each containing photos, resumes, and background checks. "Mr. Rossini takes the safety of those under his protection very seriously." Protection. The word he kept using, as if benevolence could disguise control. "When does he need me first?" I asked, flipping through the nanny profiles without really seeing them. "Saturday evening. A charity gala at the Fairmont Hotel. Formal attire required." Teresa smiled apologetically. "Which brings us to the next item. A stylist will arrive tomorrow at 10 a.m. She'll take your measurements and help select appropriate wardrobes for various events. Mr. Rossini has requested you choose what you're comfortable with. He's not dictating your style, just ensuring you have options." The thoughtfulness of it made it harder to hate him. If he'd simply filled a closet with clothes he'd chosen, I could have been angry. But giving me choice within his gilded cage, that was more insidious. What if I don't know how to act at these events? The admission cost me, revealing weakness. "You'll learn." And honestly, Teresa leaned against the counter, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Most of the people there are just as insecure, just better at hiding it. Wear something beautiful, smile, and stay close to Mr. Rossini. He'll handle the rest. After Teresa left, I explored the apartment while Emma played. The master bedroom had a king-sized bed, a walk-in closet, and an ensuite bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in. The windows looked out over the bay, where sailboats drifted like white triangles against blue water. On the nightstand, I found a note in that precise architectural handwriting. "Welcome home, Kara. Everything here is yours. Use it. Enjoy it. Let Emma be a child without worry. I'll see you Saturday." I crumpled the note in my fist, then smoothed it out again, tucking it into my pocket like a talisman or a warning. The next 2 days passed in a blur. The stylist, a whirlwind named Valentina with bright red lipstick and an eye for color, arrived with racks of clothing and boxes of shoes. She measured, assessed, and made me try on what felt like 100 different outfits while Emma watched, clapping for each one like I was a princess in a fashion show. "You have a good figure," Valentina declared, circling me in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than my old monthly rent. "Natural curves, which is refreshing. We'll play those up. Elegant, but not trying too hard. Mr. Rossini will appreciate the subtlety." "Does he do this often?" I asked. "Set up women in apartments and buy them wardrobes?" Valentina paused, pins held between her lips. She removed them carefully before answering. In the 5 years I've worked for Mr. Rossini, you're the first. Usually he just sends me to dress his dates for specific events. Women who come and go. But you? She gestured around the apartment. This is different. This is permanent. The word hung in the air like smoke. Saturday arrived too quickly. Emma spent the day at her new preschool, a place with art rooms and a playground that looked like something from a fantasy, while I prepared for my first appearance as Dante Rossini's companion. The dress Valentina had selected was midnight blue, silk that hugged my body before flowing to the floor in elegant waves. The neckline was modest, but the back was bare, exposing skin from my shoulders to my lower back. Matching heels added 4 inches to my height. A simple diamond necklace, on loan, Valentina had emphasized, glittered at my throat. I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. My hair was swept up, a few strategic curls framing my face. Makeup enhanced features I'd always considered plain, making my eyes look larger, my lips fuller, my cheekbones more pronounced. I looked expensive, polished, like someone who belonged on Dante Rossini's arm. The buzzer sounded at exactly 7 p.m. I kissed Emma goodbye. She was having a tea party with one of the approved nannies, a grandmother type named Rosa, who'd won my daughter's heart with cookies and stories, and took the elevator down to the lobby. The SUV waited at the curb, sleek and black and ominous. The driver opened the door, and there was Dante. He wore a tuxedo that had been tailored to perfection, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean waist. His hair was swept back, his jaw clean-shaven, a gold watch glinting at his wrist. But it was his eyes that caught me, the way they traveled over me slowly, taking in every detail, darkening with something that made my stomach flutter. "Beautiful," he murmured as I slid into the seat beside him. Valentina outdid herself. She said I was your first. I didn't know why I said it, but the words tumbled out, his lips curved. Did she? He reached over, his fingers finding the exposed skin of my back, tracing the line of my spine with agonizing slowness. Then she told you the truth. You are many firsts for me, Kara. I shivered under his touch, hating my body's response. What does that mean? It means don't believe everything you hear about me tonight. People will talk. They always do. They'll say I'm a monster who destroys everything I touch. They'll say women who get close to me end up ruined or dead. His hand remained on my back, possessive and warm. Some of it is even true, but you're different. Because of your uncle. Because of many things. He withdrew his hand, leaving my skin cold. Tonight, you'll meet some of those people. They'll smile and be polite, but they'll be assessing you, wondering what I see in you, trying to find your weaknesses. Don't let them. I don't know how to do this, Dante. The admission came out smaller than I intended. I'm a waitress. I don't know which fork to use or how to make small talk with criminals and socialites. You use the fork from the outside in, and you make small talk by asking questions and letting them talk about themselves. People love nothing more than the sound of their own voice. He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. But here's what you really need to know. You're with me. That means you're untouchable. That means no one will dare insult you or make you uncomfortable. And if they try? His thumb brushed my lower lip, his expression darkening. I'll destroy them. The threat should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I had in years. The Fairmont Hotel was a palace of marble and gold, its ballroom filled with San Francisco's elite, politicians rubbing shoulders with tech moguls, old money mixing with new, and threading through it all like a dangerous undercurrent, the criminals who funded and controlled so much of the city's power structure. Dante's hand found the small of my back as we entered, that now familiar possessive touch. Heads turned. Conversations paused. A ripple of recognition spread through the crowd. Dante Rossini, a voice called out. Smooth, cultured, with an edge of mockery, a man approached, silver-haired and elegant in his tuxedo, a woman in diamonds hanging on his arm. I heard you'd be gracing us with your presence. And who's this lovely creature? Kara Mitchell. Dante's voice was pleasant, but I felt the tension in his body. Kara, this is Senator Marcus Webb and his wife, Catherine. Senator. The man was a senator, and he clearly knew exactly what Dante was. Charmed, the senator said. taking my hand and pressing a kiss to my knuckles that lasted a heartbeat too long. "Where has Dante been hiding you?" "I haven't been hidden," I said, pulling my hand back. "Just working." "Working." Catherine Webb's smile was all teeth. How refreshing. So many of the girls Dante usually brings to these things are decorative but empty. "You have something behind those eyes." The insult was wrapped in a compliment, a skill I'd have to learn if I was going to survive this world. "Catherine collects art," Dante interjected smoothly, steering me away. "She has exquisite taste in paintings, but terrible judgment in people. Don't take her assessment personally." We moved through the crowd, Dante introducing me to a dizzying array of faces and names I'd never remember. A tech CEO, a real estate developer, a woman who owned half the restaurants in the city. And threaded among them, men who stood a little too still, who watched a little too carefully, who greeted Dante with the kind of deference that spoke of fear and respect in equal measure. His world, the underworld, masquerading as high society. We were at the bar when I felt it, eyes on me, intense and malevolent. I turned and saw a woman across the room, stunning in red silk, her dark eyes fixed on me with undisguised hatred. She was speaking to an older man, but her attention never wavered. "Who is that?" I whispered to Dante. He followed my gaze, and his expression went cold. "Isabella Marchetti. She was an associate. Nothing more. She doesn't look like she thinks she was nothing. What Isabella thinks is irrelevant." He took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. "What matters is what's true, and the truth is, you're the woman on my arm tonight, not her, not anyone else." Isabella started toward us, her stride purposeful, but one of Dante's bodyguards intercepted her smoothly, redirecting her toward the terrace with a few quiet words. She went, but not before shooting me one more look of pure venom. "She wants to kill me," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "She wants what she can't have." Dante pulled me closer, his arm sliding around my waist. "Let her want. You're under my protection, remember?" The rest of the evening passed in a haze of champagne and careful conversations. Dante never left my side, his hand always touching me, my waist, my back, my arm, marking me as his in front of everyone who mattered. When we danced, he held me close, his body hard against mine, moving with a grace that surprised me. "You're doing well," he murmured against my ear, his breath warm, better than I expected. "I feel like I'm drowning." But you're still breathing. That's what counts." He spun me gently, then pulled me back. "Tomorrow, this will be easier. And the day after that, easier still. Until one day, you'll wonder how you ever lived any other way." That thought terrified me more than anything else that had happened. It was past midnight when we finally left. I was exhausted, my feet aching in the beautiful heels, my face tired from maintaining a pleasant expression. In the SUV, I kicked off the shoes and leaned my head back against the leather seat. "Thank you," Dante said quietly. I opened my eyes. "For what?" "For tonight. For not running. For being exactly what I needed." He was watching me with that intense gaze, the city lights playing across his face. "I know this isn't easy for you. Nothing about you is easy." "No." He smiled, but it was sad somehow. But some difficult things are worth it. When we reached my building, he walked me to the elevator, his hand at my back one final time. "Get some rest. I'll be in touch about the next event." "When?" "Soon." He pressed the button for my floor, then stepped back, the elevator doors starting to close between us. But at the last moment, he reached out, stopping them. "Kara?" "Yes?" "You looked beautiful tonight, but you look more beautiful now, tired and real and yourself." He let the doors close, and I was alone, rising toward the apartment that was a prison disguised as paradise. Emma was asleep when I got home, Rosa dozing in the chair beside her bed. I paid the nanny, checked on my daughter, her face peaceful, her small hand clutching a stuffed dinosaur, and then stood at the window, looking out over the glittering city. Somewhere out there, Dante Rossini was returning to whatever dark place he called home. And I was here, in this beautiful cage, trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. The phone he'd given me buzzed with a message. "You were perfect tonight. Sleep well, Piccola. Tomorrow we start teaching you to fly." D. I didn't know if he meant it literally or metaphorically. I was afraid to find out. 3 months passed like a fever dream, brilliant and disorienting, and impossible to fully grasp. I attended galas in glittering ballrooms, charity auctions where single bottles of wine sold for thousands, intimate dinners where senators and tech moguls discussed policy between courses, while their criminal benefactors listened and smiled. I learned which fork to use, how to deflect intrusive questions with gracious vagueness, how to stand beside Dante Rossini and look like I belonged there. But more than that, I learned him. I learned that he took his coffee black with 1 sugar, always in the same plain white mug despite owning china that cost more per piece than my old monthly salary. I learned that he spoke 4 languages fluently and could read 3 more. I learned that he had nightmares. I'd seen the exhaustion in his eyes after particularly late nights, the way his jaw would tighten when someone mentioned his father. I learned that he was ruthless in business but surprisingly gentle with Emma, who'd taken to calling him Mr. Dante and showing him her dinosaur drawings with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of childhood. That terrified me most of all, how easily my daughter had accepted him into our lives, how she'd light up when he visited, how she'd started asking when we'd see him next. It was December now, the city dressed in holiday lights and false cheer. Emma's preschool was having a winter performance, and I'd mentioned it casually to Dante during one of our dinners. These had become more frequent, sometimes with events attached, sometimes just the 2 of us in quiet restaurants where he'd ask about my day and actually listen to the answers. I didn't expect him to come. He was a busy man, important, with concerns far beyond a 3-year-old's performance in a church basement. But when I arrived at the preschool, scanning the crowd of parents with phones raised and proud smiles, I saw him. He stood at the back, deliberately separate from the other parents, wearing dark slacks and a black sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like some dangerous poet. One of his bodyguards, Marco, I'd learned his name, stood near the door, but otherwise, Dante was alone, his attention fixed on the small stage where children in paper snowflake costumes waited for the music to start. I made my way to him, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. "You came. You said it was important to Emma." He glanced at me, and something in his expression was softer than usual. "That makes it important to me." The performance was chaos, children forgetting their lines, one crying, another waving enthusiastically at parents throughout. But Emma was perfect. She sang her solo about snowflakes with the serious concentration she brought to everything, her small voice clear and proud. When she finished, her eyes scanned the crowd until they found us, and her face split into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. After, when we collected her and she threw herself at Dante with a hug that would have been shocking 3 months ago but was now almost routine, he lifted her easily, letting her chatter about the performance while I gathered her coat and backpack. "Did you see me, Mr. Dante? Did you hear my song? I didn't forget any words." "You were magnificent," he said seriously, and she beamed. Outside, the December air was sharp with coming rain. Dante's SUV waited at the curb, but he didn't immediately move toward it. Instead, he set Emma down and crouched to her level. "Emma, your mama and I need to talk about grown-up things. Marco is going to take you to get hot chocolate and cookies while we do that, okay? Then we'll come get you." Emma looked between us, her child's intuition sensing something important. "Is Mama in trouble?" "No, Piccola." He smoothed a curl from her face with surprising tenderness. "Nothing like that." "I promise." She studied him for a moment, then nodded, taking Marco's offered hand. The large bodyguard led her toward a cafe down the street, and I watched them go with my heart in my throat. "What's wrong?" I asked when they'd disappeared inside. "Get in the car." It wasn't a request. The drive was silent, tense. Dante stared out the window, his jaw tight, his hands clasped in a way that made his knuckles white. We didn't go to a restaurant or back to my apartment. Instead, we drove to a building I recognized, one of his properties, a penthouse overlooking the bay. The apartment was masculine and minimal. Leather furniture, dark wood, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city spread below like scattered diamonds. A bar in the corner held expensive bottles. The only personal touch was a photograph on the mantel, a young Dante with an older man who had kind eyes and a warm smile. His uncle Roberto. Drink? Dante moved to the bar without waiting for an answer, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. Just tell me what's wrong. I took the glass he offered but didn't drink. You're scaring me. He downed his whiskey in 1 swallow, then poured another. Marcus is dead. The words hung in the air like smoke. I should have felt something. Grief, shock, relief. Instead, I felt numb. How? Does it matter? He turned to face me fully, and I saw something raw in his expression. He's gone. His debts died with him. You're free. Free. I laughed, but it came out broken. I live in an apartment you own, wear clothes you bought, attend events at your command. That's not freedom, Dante. Then leave. He gestured toward the door, his voice harsh. Walk away. Take Emma. Disappear. Start over somewhere I'll never find you. You're released from our agreement. No strings, no consequences. Just go. I stared at him, my heart hammering. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? My life back. My choices restored. Emma and I could leave the city, find some small town where no one knew us, where we could be ordinary again. But as I stood there, looking at this beautiful, broken man who'd given me everything while demanding so little, who'd shown my daughter kindness when he had no reason to, who looked at me sometimes like I was precious rather than convenient, I realized the terrible truth. I didn't want to leave. Why did you really bring me here, Dante? I set my untouched glass on the table. What do you actually want from me? I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its perfect order. I thought I did. I thought this was about honor, about keeping a promise to a dying man. But somewhere between that first night at the diner and watching Emma perform tonight, it became about something else, something I don't know how to name. He moved closer, and I found myself backing up until I hit the window. The cold glass at my back, his heat at my front. This close, I could see the amber flecks in his dark eyes, could smell that cedar and smoke scent that had become as familiar as breathing. I'm not a good man, Kara. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built an empire on blood and fear. His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. But when I'm with you, when I watch you with Emma, when you look at me like I might be something more than a monster, I want to be better, and that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced. Dante, let me finish. His thumb traced my cheekbone. These 3 months, having you in my life, watching you navigate my world with grace and strength, seeing you be a mother to that incredible little girl, it's been the closest thing to peace I've known since my uncle died. But I have no right to keep you. You deserve someone good, someone safe, someone who can give you a normal life. And what if I don't want normal? The words escaped before I could stop them. What if I'm tired of safe? Something dangerous flared in his eyes. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them. And God help me, I did. Somewhere in the careful dance we'd been doing, somewhere between the expensive dinners and the gentle touches, and the way he'd become part of Emma's life, I'd stopped seeing him as just a means to an end. I'd started seeing him. I'm not saying I love you. I'm not that foolish. But I'm saying I don't want to leave. I'm saying maybe this cage you've built isn't a cage at all. Maybe it's just a different kind of freedom. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle or careful. It was desperate and claiming, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressing mine against the window. I kissed him back with equal desperation. 3 months of tension and denied attraction exploding between us. He tasted like whiskey and danger and dark promises, and I wanted more. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. If you stay, if we do this, everything changes. I won't be able to keep my distance. I won't be able to pretend you're just an obligation. Then don't. I pulled him back, kissing him again, softer this time. Stop pretending. Stop holding back. Just be honest with me. Honest. He laughed against my lips. Honesty is dangerous in my world. Then be dangerous. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. I want you, Kara. Not as an obligation, not as a debt repaid. I want you in my bed, in my life, in my world. I want to give Emma everything she deserves and watch her grow up safe and happy. I want to come home to you instead of empty apartments and cold silence. His hands framed my face, but I also want you to choose this. Truly choose it, knowing who I am and what I do. Can you do that? Could I? Could I knowingly tie my life to a man who lived in shadows, who'd killed and would kill again, who existed in a world of violence and moral ambiguity? Could I let Emma grow up knowing that the man who treated her with such kindness was also capable of terrible things? I thought about the past 3 years, working myself to exhaustion, watching Emma go without, drowning in bills and fear and loneliness. I thought about these past 3 months. Security, comfort, watching my daughter thrive. And I thought about Dante himself, complicated and dangerous, and surprisingly tender, a man who kept his promises and valued honor even in a dishonorable world. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I can choose this. Choose you. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise, rare and beautiful and transformative. He kissed me again, slower now, savoring it. Then he took my hand and led me to the bedroom. What happened next was both terrifying and transcendent, his hands learning my body with the same focused intensity he brought to everything, my own exploration of him revealing scars and stories written on skin. We came together like storm systems colliding, destructive and creative all at once. And afterward, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like him, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I should warn you, he murmured against my hair, his arm wrapped possessively around my waist. I'm not good at sharing. What's mine, I protect obsessively. If you're mine now, that means I'll be insufferable about your safety, about Emma's safety. It means bodyguards and security systems and me knowing where you are. Sounds like a cage, does it? He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me. Or does it sound like someone finally giving a damn about keeping you safe? When he put it that way, the cage didn't seem so terrible. We collected Emma from the cafe an hour later, her face sticky with chocolate and happiness. In the car, she fell asleep between us, her head on my lap, her small hand reaching out to grab Dante's finger. He held on carefully, his expression soft in a way I'd never seen before. She trusts you, I said quietly. I'll die before I betray that trust. Not dramatic, just factual. Both of you, you're mine to protect now. That's not an obligation or a duty. It's a privilege. That night, after putting Emma to bed in her princess room, after Dante had checked every lock twice and stationed one of his men in the building's lobby, we stood at the window looking out at the city. Tell me about your uncle, I said. The real story, not just the obituary version. So he did. He told me about Roberto Rossini, who'd taken in a traumatized 8-year-old and taught him that strength and honor weren't mutually exclusive, who'd built an empire, but never lost sight of what mattered, who'd died surrounded by people who genuinely loved him, not just feared him. He would have liked you, Dante said finally. He always said the measure of a person wasn't in how they acted when they had power, but how they treated others when they had none. You had nothing, Kara, but you still apologized for spilling that coffee. You still smiled and meant it. That's rare. So you've been protecting me because your uncle asked you to. I've been protecting you because you deserve it. The uncle's request just gave me an excuse. He pulled me closer, his chin resting on top of my head. And somewhere along the way, protecting you became wanting you. And wanting you became needing you. That's dangerous, isn't it? In your world? Incredibly. His arms tightened around me, which is why no one can ever know how much you mean to me. They'll see you as my companion, my woman, someone under my protection, but they can't know you're my weakness. That would make you a target. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid enough for both of us. He turned me to face him, his expression serious. Promise me something, Kara. Promise that if I ever tell you to run, you'll take Emma and go. No questions, no hesitation. Promise me. The intensity in his voice made me shiver. I promise. He kissed my forehead, a gesture of such tenderness it made my eyes sting. Good. Now come to bed. We have a lifetime to navigate, and I want to start now. A lifetime. The word should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like a promise. As we settled into bed, his bed, in his apartment, which he'd already said would become our apartment, I thought about how far I'd come from that exhausted waitress at Romano's diner. I'd traded one kind of survival for another, one set of chains for a different set entirely. But these chains were lined with silk and secured with devotion. These chains came with a man who looked at my daughter like she hung the moon and looked at me like I was air itself. These chains kept me safe instead of holding me back. Maybe that's what freedom really was. Not the absence of constraints, but the choice of which constraints to accept, and whose hands held the other end. What are you thinking? Dante's voice was drowsy, his hand tracing lazy patterns on my hip. That I should thank you for leaving that note under the plate. Should I thank Marcus for stealing from me? God, no. I turned in his arms, studying his face in the dim light. But maybe thank your uncle for noticing me. He had good taste. His hand cupped my face, his thumb brushing my lower lip, in everything. Dante? What happens now? After tonight? After this? What's next? He was quiet for a moment, considering. Now we build something real, not an obligation or an arrangement, but an actual life. I'll still have my business, still do things you're better off not knowing about. But I'll come home to you. I'll teach Emma to ride a bike and intimidate her future boyfriends. I'll take you to boring charity dinners and make love to you after. We'll fight and make up and figure out how two people from completely different worlds can build one together. Sounds complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. He pulled me closer, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. But I've built an empire from nothing, Kara. I think I can handle building a family. A family. The words settled around us like a blanket, warm and terrifying and perfect. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 lights, each one representing a life, a story, a choice made in darkness. And here, in this penthouse that floated above it all, I'd made my choice too. I'd chosen the monster who wanted to be a man, the criminal who valued honor, the dangerous man who'd given me safety and asked for nothing but my presence in return. I'd chosen Dante Rossini, and as sleep pulled me under, his arms wrapped around me like the most beautiful cage in the world. I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with peace. I'd choose him again, and again, and again, every single time.